Well, welcome to Podcast Tips with Rob Greenlee. This is the live show. My name is Rob Greenlee, and we're in episode 7 tonight. And so definitely stay with us. We have a legend on the podcast or on the live stream tonight that came out of the podcast world in the early days of podcasting with video and has really expanded her career into live streaming. And she's going to join us here in a minute on the stream. And her name is Luria Petrucci. And we're both podcast Hall of Famers. So having us all on one show together is really exciting. I haven't spoken to Luria in quite a few years, actually, since she was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And we're going to be taking your questions. So jump into the chat and let us know your questions. If you have any comments, it's all open. And we're going to talk about the hot trends in audio and video podcasting coming in 2024. And, can you grow a show faster with both audio and video? Or is it better to just do one or the other? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And I think Lori is a terrific one to counterbalance my audio dominance in my background. So, and we're also going to see, are we going to see a reset in learnings on how to create content with AI? And that in combination with audio and video, AI is going to have an impact. So I'm hoping I can talk to Lori about that too. And branded content versus advertising supported content is going to be talked about tonight too. So, and we really enjoy growing this live community that we have around this show. I'm only in episode 7. And so we're still starting and growing really early in this process. But I wanted to also mention that I'm going to have a giveaway at the end of the show. So just go into the comment field and type in hashtag the yard. And that will enter you into the drawing to win a StreamYard mug and a hoodie from StreamYard here, which is what I'm wearing here, so you can stay warm in the winter here. So anyway, so let me pull up Luria here, and she can join me on stage. Luria, thank you so much for joining me. It's
Rob,
wonderful to have you.
It's so great to finally chat with you again and be around you. I mean, we go way, way, way back. So thank you so much for inviting me on here. I loved being able to, support the StreamYard audience and be here again because it's been a while.
Yeah, I know that you've done some, I think you joined a session with Melanie, I believe, at one point.
Yeah.
It was on your channel, I think.
And Melanie and I have done a lot of stuff together, both on StreamYard and on my channel. And, I love the team from StreamYard as well. So we've done a lot together.
Yeah, and I wanted to just mention to the audience, if you're not familiar with Luria, she's kind of like the leading light at livestreamingpros.com. And I will pull that up on the screen here so you can see that. And I will also pull that up so you can see her website here.
Did you say leading light? Because Rob,
I would say so. Yes.
Did you know what my name means, light?
Oh, well, that's awesome. That's even better. I'm glad I
was wondering if that was like
spontaneously thought about that. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. So you've been working in video and video podcasting since 2005, doing some amazing content in the early days of this medium as a show host and a creator, and really started doing live streams, I guess, back in 2007. Is that right? That was like the early days of even YouTube. Back in
When I first started, YouTube wasn't even a thing, or just barely a baby, right? And it was all iTunes at that point where I grew my original audience, and then I moved over to YouTube. But yeah, I had, over 10 years, I had built up an audience of 2 million, subscribers, and that was, I loved the early days because it was so different and it was so unique, and I was hand coding my RSS feeds, to put this podcast out there.
I did the same thing, so I'm right up there with you on that. But I would love to play it, and I did run this past Luria before we started the show, but it's play one of her earlier episodes, and I think it would really be interesting for the audience to see just the energy and the talent that she brought to this medium. And really, I think one of the big reasons why she's been as successful as she has is that recognition that you really do need to bring a lot of energy and stuff like that. And that'll just be gushing in this little clip that I'm going to play for you of her on here. Let me click play.
Must-have gadgets for the 4th of July, or as it's known outside the U.S., Friday. I'm Callie Lewis. Welcome to Geek Beat. This episode of Geek Beat TV is brought to you by Audible. So the 4th of July is coming up in the U.S., or as it's known in the U.K., Good Riddance to the Colonies Day. And wherever you are, it means it's time for a picnic, unless you're down under where it's winter. Gosh, it is hard to please everyone with such a global audience, but I love you guys. Well, we've got some...
Okay, I don't want to play too much of it. I mean, we can totally get sucked up into it, so it's just a matter of... And then also, I wanted to share I have the screen share, is her website too. So let's pull that up here too. So you're offering services to companies, individuals, I would imagine.
Entrepreneurs and creators. Right. Yeah. So what you showed before, I spent 10 years doing, targeted, really gadget reviews and news. I was one of the first, tech review channels. And so I spent 10 years on general gadgets and tech. And really now what I do is focus on creators and entrepreneurs who want to build their personal brand through video and live streaming and really help them use the right tech so that they look professional. You can do fun little things like, throwing like emojis up on screen and all kinds of things that I love to do with our audience, and, really presenting that pro version of you.
Right.
That doesn't affect your personality, just the visuals, so that you can gain that instant credibility and really help people understand how to engage with their audience and build up a really strong community of people who are loyal to the community and to the host, and build a business from that, a long-term business. So that's what I love helping people do.
Yeah, and that's the key to this too, is that you're really building community and you're building connections with individuals, and that's always been the key. And that clip that I played from you from a series that you did many years ago now really was a video podcast, and it was streamed online, and you were starting to work with the streaming platforms as well, but that was a downloadable episode off of an RSS feed through a platform back then called, the name of it was Revision 3. And if this audience watched my last week's episode, I had the CEO of a Revision 3 on my show, Jim Lauterbach.
Jim, you had Jim? Yeah, I missed it. Oh, I have to go back and watch that.
Yep. So we were talking about those early days of the medium, and how what we're seeing today is kind of like a return to some degree of what was really growing and developing back then. Really, it's really ironic, and I'm not sure why you think that's happening.
Well, here's the thing, is I think that because I'm coming up in 2 weeks on my 18th year of doing video, which is insane. You can see my gray hair. I'm calling myself old. Let's just get it out of the way. But, over 18 years, I've been able to really spot patterns through the video industry and the online world that we live in. And while a lot has changed, a lot has gotten easier for creators to create, a lot has changed in negative and positive ways, the truth is it all cycles. Just like anything in life, this stuff is cycling. And so it's really interesting to see. Back when we got started, there wasn't video or audio. I mean, there was, but it was all under the umbrella of podcasting.
Right.
And that's why I'm in the Podcast Hall of Fame, because we had video and audio versions, and
Mm-hmm.
it was all under the same umbrella of the same tech, background and how it was delivered. Then podcasting made a big switch to audio only, and everybody really called podcasting as if it was just the audio delivery format.
Right.
And now, as YouTube has really started to embrace podcasting, I think that was a big kicker in this trend of kind of getting back to the old way. We have seen now everybody really focused on video and audio podcasting again. And so whether you're just turning on your video camera and taking the audio, putting that on an audio podcast, and putting the video out in numerous video formats, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Spotify even, you can have it all at this point again and still call it a podcast. And so for me, that's been a really interesting trend to see it go from video and audio to audio only, and now it's back to video and audio. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad to see that happening. But I also think that there's a really interesting question here of, what does podcasting even mean anymore, right?
I ask that question all the time myself. So
yes.
Totally
What's the
board.
Definition of a podcast versus a video show or a live stream? I think that's still in the works of being determined.
Yeah, it's always been kind of this fluctuation. And also, I don't know if you recall, Luria, in the early days of podcasting, a lot of the early podcasters didn't really like the name podcast.
No, everybody really bucked against it.
Yeah, well, it was really for a pretty valid reason. It was named after a platform that we all thought would eventually disappear, which was the iPod.
Yeah.
And guess what?
Exactly.
It disappeared as of last year. So
Did it finally go away?
Yeah, it was the last one that Apple actually made. I think it was the small little mini or something like that.
The Nano?
The Nano.
No, the Nano was gone a long time ago.
But anyway, it was one of the kind of portable media player versions of it. And they just canceled it. And I think that was the big reason why a lot of the early podcasters didn't like it. But the problem that came up is that nobody had a better name.
I know.
I mean,
we're like, what do we call ourselves?
Media, right? No, that's not going to get anybody excited about this media.
Yeah.
It needs to be different. And so that actually plays really well into what you're saying at the bigger picture is that we're seeing kind of a convergence happen again.
Yeah.
And that is important to acknowledge right now.
It's very important to acknowledge it and really think about the identity of it instead of just going with the flow. April in the chat is saying, for me, a podcast is anything online where people are having a conversation, distributing it to a community via audio and or video, which is absolutely true. Well, like a conversation of the hosts, which brings up this really good point, because like a conversation can happen between hosts. A conversation also happens between host and community. And back in the day, as you know, when it first started, it was actually really just a one-way medium. Right? Yeah. Podcasting didn't have a lot of, depending on the platform, but really it was delivered on iTunes and through devices and Libsyn and things like that. It didn't really have a community conversation. And as time has evolved, especially through the pandemic, man, people demanded conversation with the hosts that they're watching of any form of content. And so while podcasting has traditionally been very one way, it's now evolved to the point where viewers, listeners are demanding that point of community. And I think that's huge. And I love that, because community is what I'm all about. And so I think that now podcasters are having to look at ways in which they can engage their audience better, more consistently, and in other ways than they were traditionally used to.
Yeah, and if you think about it, even from what I'm doing right here, the whole live component. I mean, I started on live radio myself running all the dials and the sliders and taking the phone calls and all that kind of stuff on my live radio show. And I took it out of the radio station on a cassette tape and played it into a $19 cassette player to make an MP3 file. So that's how I kind of got started in all this. And so the whole live component really kind of converges an energy level that you can't really replicate in a recording. So, and I know exactly, you're the perfect example of the energy difference, I think, between a recording and a live production. Is it,
well, and I think you can get the energy. It just takes a lot more work, and live has a natural upswing of that energy because there's a lot of, I call him Lamb, the live adrenaline monster. He's the guy in your head, telling you, oh, what if you forget what you're going to say? What if, things go wrong, all of that. And so that adrenaline rises, and so the energy rises at the same time. But yeah, I think that from a live perspective, a lot of people now are doing live and turning that into a podcast, whether that's on YouTube, clicking the podcast button on the replay, or so that it goes to the podcast app, or whether they're stripping the audio and sending that out into audio only formats. A lot of people are, just starting with that live component, at least that video component, and then doing what they need to get it out distributed to the places that they want to. That unfortunately requires a little bit more work on the creator's side.
That's the part.
Okay, let's go there. A lot of work.
Yeah, and it's also, there's opportunities now that are growing too as these AI platforms start to, enable us to do things maybe a little more rapidly. But I think we have to treat those platforms with a lot of respect too, and realize what they're good at, maybe what they're not good at, and that's and to kind of make up for that by your human intuition and your creative energy. Sure. I'm a big fan of the AI tools. I'm getting in and using them, but I also have this compelling need to human edit them because I'm not sure that they're quite human yet. So and hopefully they never will be human, but it's just a matter, that intelligence might get to a point where it's pretty darn good, so. But can it fully reflect your values as a content creator is the bigger question, right? And that's, I don't know if you've wrestled with that too.
Well, sure. I mean, I think we're all wrestling with that concept and that that question. And I'm gonna back up here, and I promise I'm gonna tie it back to AI here in a second.
Yeah.
Remember back in the day, since we're talking about how old we are, back in the day when everybody was doing the cartoon avatars on like Twitter and all the social platforms.
Yep.
Everybody was going cartoon. And that was a big trend for 2-3 years, maybe 4. And then all of a sudden, everybody dropped it because what did they want? They wanted human connection, right? And this is another up and down kind of pattern that I've seen happen over the last 18 years, which is, we get interesting things like cartoon avatars or AI now, and everything always will come back to human connection, human knowledge, human everything. That doesn't mean that AI doesn't have a place. It absolutely has a place. As more people use AI and things like, connecting AI to the audio format to put it out in a video format, or anything else that you're doing, that human element is going to be more and more important as this AI trend continues. So while we want to dive into and use the tools that are available to us to make things more efficient, to make things more interesting, whatever your reason for that is, that's great. And always remember, humans are humans, and we want that human connection. That is how we are built at our core.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's ever going to be really under threat, that's going to be the case. I think a lot of people are fearful that there's going to be a change like that everybody's going to produce content that's AI and the humans are going to be, gone. I don't see that happening. I just don't see it happening like that. And I think that the power of it is we just don't know yet because we just don't know what the capability is. But if we're trying to build connections with the audience, clearly the direction that we're going is around community building, around human interaction and human contact. And unless we're willing to give that up. But Cameron asked a good question here. And I think it's really, do you think you get more views on an original stream? Now that would be a live stream or in replay. Now, that's actually a really interesting question because some shows do get more engagement on live than they do in replay. I think it depends on the show, and I think it depends on how the production is done. Like this show is very interactive. You know, we have the audience engaging with it. And is it going to be as appealing to an on-demand listener? I don't know. What's your view on that?
So again, I agree with you. It depends on how the host has formatted it, how the host has promoted it, what the community engagement is like. And so typically, generally speaking, yes, you are actually going to get way more views on a replay than a live stream. However, let's just take Emily D. Baker for an example. She's doing an incredible job with, she does she kind of breaks down from the legal side, some of the stories, some of the popular suit stories and things like that. And so she takes the pop culture and legal worlds and combines them, and she has a huge audience, and she gets a huge audience on live. I believe, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe that she also still gets a larger audience over the course of a replay than she gets live, right? Because that's the nature of it, because there are fewer people who can show up live. But I think that you're always you can expect that to happen. However, the retention of a live stream video watched on replay is going to be much shorter because it's not as engaging to a replay viewer. So you've got to really think a couple of things. While you're live, you've got to think about the intention of your live stream. Is it for podcasting purposes? For a replay? Is it for education? Is it for community building where you're really connecting with the audience? A community focused live stream is not going to be as compelling to a replay audience. If you take more of an educational approach, for example, it can be structured in a way, and I have different show flows for different purposes and intentions, but it can be structured in a way that it is actually incredibly valuable on the replay. And so you've got to really think about that. So if we're thinking about maybe you're going live first, and you're doing a podcast, however we're defining that, and you then want to flip that into the podcast tab on YouTube, or you want to send that audio out to Apple, whatever we're calling it.
Sure.
You want to redistribute that as a podcast. Then you can also think about, well, what do I want to clip out of this video to then put into maybe a short form video, a VOD, a video on demand, meaning like a 5 to 10 minute video on YouTube or elsewhere. So you can really start to think about that repurposing structure of it. But in order to do that, if you're going to start it out live, you've got to know what your purpose is after the fact in order to build it out in a structure and a run of show that's actually going to work for you.
Yeah, it's actually like a blank canvas. You can do pretty much anything you want, and that's what's complicated about it too. But the question here from Flash in the pan is, I'm trying to drive traffic to my actual live stream. So, and I guess some shows, like I used to work for Spreaker, a podcast hosting platform that had live audio on it, and many years ago when I worked for them, I saw shows on that platform that had like 6,000 viewers on their, or not viewers, but listeners on their live audio stream. Yeah. But yet the podcast replay on it was getting like maybe 1,000 or 1,500 downloads. So it kind of gets back to, what the community is getting out of the program, and it may not be fitting for an on-demand replay type thing. And I wonder if that explains why some shows, now granted, some shows on YouTube that are very popular, that are basically not necessarily live shows, but ones that are catering to a kind of a visual experience over kind of like an audio experience. If they're presenting
Right.
their content in a way that's so visually enticing that people would rather watch the video than listen to the audio. What's your thoughts on that?
I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
What does the audience get? What we want as
Right.
creators, whether we're creating a live stream, a podcast, short form content,
Mhm.
whatever,
Mhm.
the only thing that matters is what the audience gets out of it. So what is the audience getting out of it? If you're trying to flash in your pan, drive traffic to your live stream and you're not seeing traction, likely one, you don't have an audience yet. I don't know if that's the case or not.
Yeah.
That's option one, is that you just don't have enough of an audience to get some, to drive that traffic there yet. But
Yeah.
also, if you do have some social following or anything like that, and you're not seeing results from your promotion into your live stream
Mhm.
or videos or podcast or anything, you're not giving the audience a reason to show up. You're not giving an audience a reason that they need to stop what they're doing. They've got kids, they've got, work, they've got laundry to do. Literally, we are busy people, all of us at all times. What is it going to take to stop your audience in their tracks and get them to show up?
Yeah.
Give them a reason. And if you don't do that, you won't see that traction. If you do, then you're going to be able to start building a community.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting time, because even back when you were doing video, back in the early days of podcasting, live wasn't really that available. I mean, I know it was kind of
No,
early
it was
for
hard.
YouTube, and so you really didn't have that. It was really, that live interaction was really only on audio. So
Well, I mean, so back then it was like YouTube didn't have live, Facebook didn't have live until 2017.
exactly.
But where we were seeing live, it started back in 2007, was Ustream and Justin
Oh,
TV.
right. That's true.
And I was streaming from the first phone that had it available, which was the N95, the Nokia N95, using the Quick app QIK. It was like super horrible quality, but we were able to develop a community that would watch us on Ustream and Justin and those early platforms, that was able to have that community connection. And I remember, so here's a little interesting tidbit. I learned how to communicate with my audience. One day I did not show up. I had a schedule, and this is really important for live or for any content that you're creating, less so on recorded video these days, but live is absolutely important for you to communicate with your audience. I'm going to be live at this time. Well, I communicated that, and then I had a regular time, and I did not actually show up on time because I was busy or something, life was happening. And an audience member, a viewer, messaged me and was like, hey, you said you were going to be live and you didn't show up, you didn't communicate. He was upset at me. Turns out that was the magical Mr. Paul Dixon, who is our graphic designer on our show now. He's been with me for forever.
Interesting. Well, he was a fan long ago then. Yeah.
Yeah, he taught me the value of communication with your audience, and that's a really important piece of that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's almost like appointment viewing to some degree. I know that even NBC, the major network, had this must-see TV Thursday nights. I know back many, many years ago. And in some ways, that's kind of true about what's happening here, is that, it's like this show. I mean, I'm doing it every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and people can count on it being here. I know April is here, every week, and I appreciate her so much for coming in and contributing so much. And she has another question up here. Do you prefer pre-recording video? I think we've kind of covered that one a little bit. Pre-recorded video versus hosting live, and why? I think the number one reason for me is just the energy. And I've been doing live quite a bit. Actually, I do another show live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. on the podcast industry. I've been doing for 12 years. So
Yeah.
it's been something I've been doing for a long time. And I don't do any preparation for that show. I do much more preparation for this show than I do for that show.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway,
and
but
I
what's
would
your
say,
yeah
go ahead.
view on
Go
that?
ahead.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for me, it depends on the intention of the video. If I'm looking to do something that's short and sweet, that's succinct and to the point, that's really packed with value, that is search-based, content that I'm trying to get out on my YouTube channel, that will find me a new audience, I prefer pre-recorded. If I'm trying to build my community, really deepen that relationship with them, or find a new audience through value-oriented live streams, then that's also something that I prefer, right? So like I prefer the format based on the value that I want to see happen, with always, always, always the viewer in mind. What are they getting from the content?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And Rodney has a really interesting kind of observation too, and I think it's pretty indicative of the power of this is that when you do it live, it's more likely to be natural. Like I create an outline for this show every week, but it seems like every single episode that I do this is that I follow the end and the beginning outline, but I don't follow anything in the middle, right? Because it just becomes a conversation, and you can't really outline that. I mean, you can kind of have a little bit of focus, but it's almost like it's still helpful for me to have this, but it seems like I never really use it. So it's more like it's more important for me to be natural and be kind of spontaneous and reaction and listen to you. And I mean, I'm already juggling a lot of stuff with trying to keep up with the comments, but to be able to just hold on to what's actually happening and what you're saying and what you're communicating, and to be able to add to that and extract more out of you, because I know that there's so much inside of you that you probably struggle to some degree to share with your community, because I know I do.
There's so much. So I recently went through an exercise and wrote down everything I know, like all the different topics that I have experience at, and it was a long list. Yeah. And so the point of the exercise was just trying to like, how do I categorize this? How do I help people the way I can help people, because I have so much experience in various ways and formats and different types of streaming and different types of video and podcasting and all of that. I was really, to your point, I was trying to condense it down on paper so that I could see how I could best deliver that to the audience. And so, I think that we are all that way, not just because I have 18 years of experience. Regardless of what it is or how much experience you have a ton of knowledge. And so we just always need to, forward face that value that the audience is getting. And, at times we're not going to say it all, because not all of it's relevant at all times, right?
Yeah, and how important is kind of quality now? I know it's a very subjective kind of perspective on this. I know this isn't addressing flash in the pans question, but I think over the last year or so, since the pandemic started, I think there's been a lot more. I was very amused, and you probably were too, at all the major media outlets trying to do their content from home, right? Yeah. Back in 2020 and 2021. How they were all becoming podcasters, but they felt like they were very reluctant at it, because they actually had to do some of this stuff themselves instead of just show up in the studio and record. So this quality thing has become, since then I've built out my own studio. I got my own HD camcorder that I have here from Sony, and it's not a webcam anymore. I kind of moved away from the webcam thing, and I know that your background and your video and your lighting and everything like that is top notch, and that's to be expected, I guess, with your background. But how important is that stuff today, do you think?
So again, it depends on platform and what the audience is getting from you. So I'll take this a couple different directions, if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
One, professional quality video delivers instant credibility. So if you're, if you're actually trying to build an authoritative brand, which most of my audience are, then it really helps with that visual. I have students who will show up on Zoom with their pro quality setup and be able to throw, emojis and graphics and stuff on screen. And they, I had one that signed a $100,000 contract right on the spot just because they looked professional and that person trusted them instantly. So that's one thing to consider, is that instant credibility for authoritative. For me, I can have the fancy graphics and have the fancy stuff and also be incredibly authentic and, just down to earth and just who I am at all times. But it's hard to get there for most people because the fancy stuff, tends to kind of like overtake their personality. Yeah. And so you got to work at that, having those work parallel instead of intertwined. But those two things are very, very important. And so when it comes to the more raw video and without the fancy cameras or the, pro lights and all of that, it can really help you connect on a human level with your audience.
Yeah, right.
And that's also really important. So I look at it as, what do I need to share right now and what format is best for that? If I'm doing educational content, that's gonna happen from my studio here. And as somebody said in the comments, I have 9 different cameras that I can pull from and, do the whole thing, and it's fancy.
Yeah.
And it adds a level of, by the way, engagement to the audience. Visually speaking, it keeps people's interest when I'm switching cameras and throwing graphics and all of that. So that's super helpful. But if I'm going to do content where I'm really just trying to connect with the audience and be vulnerable and human, I'll either do that from a good quality camera, but sitting on my couch or on my floor like I have done in the past, or I'll just pull out my phone, right? And I'll go vertical and I will just talk to the audience. So what are you trying to deliver?
Right.
What is best format for that? And what is the right platform for that as well? We tend to find that YouTube Shorts, for instance, let's talk vertical raw video. YouTube Shorts tend to be a little bit more higher quality, and generally speaking, than TikTok. Right? And TikTok raw video, not professionally produced, works really, really well. But we're seeing more and more of the professional quality on TikTok. So it's kind of like balance. It's going to scale and balance itself out. But again, I just go back to, what is the intention of this content? What does the audience need? And how can I best deliver that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's becoming rather complex, and I think, flash in the pans comment here, that it's, while live, I try very hard not to have dead air.
Yeah.
And this was an issue with my many years on radio when I was on the XM Satellite Radio Network too. Should you be concerned about a little bit of dead air now and then? I'm not as concerned about it as maybe I used to be. I used to be like, people are going to think something's wrong with me or something like that if I have a little bit of dead air. But it does, there's a little bit of context to that. So there needs to be maybe a contextual reason why you have some dead air.
Yes.
And that
Ding,
is
ding, ding.
to build some comprehension, I guess, on the part of your audience, and to build a little tension. So if you say something controversial, just shut the heck up, for a second and let them ingest that before you start flooding them with something else, right?
So, absolutely.
I know
Communication 101.
Yeah, talk radio guys have done that masterfully over the years, is to say something, like a Rush Limbaugh or a Howard Stern, say something crazy, and then they just shut down for a second. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're throwing stuff constantly at people, but you're right. It's intentional dead air can be really powerful.
Yeah, it can be, but I guess really what Flash in the Pans comment is really about, if it's dead air because they made some sort of production mistake or something.
Yeah.
That's a different issue.
Whether we're talking, audio podcasting, video podcasting, live streams, whatever, when a lot of people are so scared to make a mistake
Yeah.
and have dead air or screw something up or whatever. And I always like to come back to what you're feeling and thinking and the way you're reacting to whatever happens. That is what the audience is going to feel. So our emotions are directly connected to our audience's emotions because they're picking up on what we're putting down, right? And so if you think about it from that perspective, like, okay, so one time I was swinging a lightsaber around in the studio, and I have a.
That's a common.
I don't
thing
even
to
know.
do,
I mean, just
Luria.
it's like, come on.
All right.
Like, why wouldn't I be? And I cut off like I have lots of plants in my studio, in my house, which is, this is my living room. Welcome to my living room. And I accidentally like chopped one of my plants in half.
Wow.
And,
so that lightsaber was effective at actually cutting something. Huh?
It actually was.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And there was dead air in that moment because I was like, it was like one of my favorite plants. And I was like, what did I just do?
Right.
And so then, as soon as I like realized what happened, I picked it up and I just made fun of myself because the audience is going to feel what we feel. My green screen fell down one time. I'm not using a green screen right now. I rarely do. I only use it very intentionally. Yeah, right. But my green screen fell backwards and almost hit one of my plants again. And, so whatever is happening, whatever mistake I make, if there's a feeling associated with it, if I'm feeling anxious about it, the audience is going to feel anxious. And what they feel determines whether they ever show back up again. What do you make your audience feel, whatever kind of content you're creating? Yeah. If you can make them feel good, happy, or excited, whether that's positive, negative, whatever, right? Then they show back up if that's the feeling that they enjoy. And so then, that's just a direct connection to be considering. If I'm going to be anxious because I made a mistake, the audience is going to be anxious. If I'm going to make fun of myself and just laugh with it, the audience is going to do the same.
Don't take yourself too seriously when it comes to
yes, exactly.
to some degree. But it does take a little bit of time to get comfortable.
It does.
With being on camera and feeling like that you're doing the right thing with your microphone. I know it's a skill that takes time to develop. It's not, and if you're doing video, audio is a completely different situation, really, to some degree, than if you're just doing audio. If you're just doing audio, I can pull this expensive professional microphone and get right up on it and sound great for those audio listeners, but the video listeners not quite as appealing, right? So that's the trade-off here, right?
For sure.
So, and it says here, Flash in the Pan says, I do not broadcast to podcast sites live, though with the new Podcasting 2.0 RSS initiative that's being pushed in the industry right now, you will be able to potentially stream live to a podcast listening app at some point. If some newer listening apps, which are starting to develop, one's called Fountain, have the ability, if the hosting platform has the ability to integrate a link potentially to a live stream, let's say off of YouTube or maybe off of some other HLS kind of streaming platform tool that you might want to use to stream to that mobile app. So, these convergences are happening in a variety of different ways, even on the technology side and the consumption side.
Awesome.
And I think RSS is very concerned about its long-term viability and because there is a lot of interest in converging. Look what YouTube's doing. They're taking video podcasts and converging them with audio podcasts to some degree, though, there's two different things going on there. But we didn't come here to talk entirely about what's going on at YouTube. But that's a little bit of a confusing situation. I think a lot of people are confused about what's happening around this convergence, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this show to some degree, is to help people understand that. And my background and your background is key to helping us understand this and trying to work through those issues. And
what would you say the most point of confusion is when it comes to podcasting and YouTube that you're
Yeah, I
seeing?
think it's just it's kind of two levels. There's the podcast industry just generally. A lot of the early kind of platforms and stuff don't really have any connection to YouTube, so it's
Right.
almost like they feel like um, the YouTube somehow has appropriated the name and the medium of podcasting and integrated into their platform, even though YouTube has been involved in video podcast distribution for a long time. It's just
Yeah.
that the industry thought of themselves as kind of this island that was open and not tied to a
Right.
proprietary platform. Even though the truth of the matter is podcasting has been aligned with proprietary platforms since
Yeah.
the very beginning. I mean, think of Apple. I mean, Apple is
Yeah.
like the epitome of a proprietary platform.
Right.
But
And every platform is trying to
Right.
really like hold tight to their distribution of that. And so then you have all of these different pockets of distribution that make it really frustrating. So
Yeah, and I think that they feel a little bit of threat from
Yeah.
from YouTube is
That's
that
fair.
if YouTube gets involved in this, then that's going to take the importance of a open RSS distribution off the table, and everything winds up going proprietary. Like everybody has to upload to Spotify directly and upload to Apple directly, upload to YouTube directly, and we've lost that RSS syndication, right? The
But
ease
don't
of
you already
distribution.
have to?
Yeah, and the truth is that the industry has been moving that direction for a long time, and I think that there's a lot of people on the podcast side that just want to hold on,
Yeah.
to that
To the
uniqueness
idea
and the
of-
openness of RSS. Even though I'm not sure that it's under as much threat as they think it is. So it's been this
I agree
way
with
for
you.
many
Yeah.
years.
It has been that way for many years. It was intended to be open, as you say, right? But I never felt like it was just completely open and easy to distribute across the
Right.
board from one
Right.
feed. So I think that's I think that it's a natural inclination to be scared of YouTube adopting that, but I think that here's the reality of it. Having been in this industry for 18 years, if you don't stay flexible and adaptive,
Yeah.
you will die. So, now is the
Get left
time
behind, right?
to embrace
Yeah.
what is happening in the future. And part of that is YouTube adapting, podcasting in a different way, though, like it's not totally the same. And you've got to now make decisions on how much time do you have for managing the distribution and repurposing strategy, and where is your audience most likely to be, if it's Spotify or if it's Apple or if it's YouTube, or maybe it's a couple of those and you focus on those, but then you also have to think, if you're gonna go on YouTube, you have to think about that multi-format strategy. And are you going to keep it on the same channel? Are you going to have different channels? Because at the end of the day, every audience wants something different from you. And if you can deliver the same content in various formats, sometimes that's not going to happen successfully on a single channel. Sometimes it's going to happen on multiple channels from you, podcast channel versus, your VODs and lives or your shorts, right? So you've got to really think through that strategy.
Yeah.
And it all boils down, like I keep saying, to the audience's desires.
Yeah, and it's sometimes hard to know what the audience
is.
wants early on in that
Early
process.
on. Mm-hmm.
And I like the intent of Robin's question here. Can you talk about live phone calls in streaming shows? So I tried to play around with getting video comments coming into the show during the show a couple weeks ago, and I'm still planning. I'm working with a platform called Braid, and it basically enables like the audience to click on a link, and I'm trying to figure out a way to get that to the audience, where they can go in and record a 30-second question in video, right? And then I could pull it into the show and share that on the screen and then talk about their question or something like that. So have that kind of video interaction as well. But this is really more live phone calls, which is another element that we could do, and I've done a lot of that on live radio. So it's not an impossible thing. I mean, I could do it with my mobile phone right here with my Roadcaster.
Exactly. That's the best.
Could do
That's
that.
the kind of the easiest solution is the Roadcaster doing that.
It might be something I explore doing at some point. Just
Yeah,
playing
you
around
should
with
just
stuff.
have fun with it. I think that when it comes to that audio only format coming into a video format, you've got to think about the audience reaction to that. And maybe that's a good use of some kind of AI, to dub over that audio, or having some kind of visualization. It really goes to the old days of that radio broadcast like you used to do with the audio callers. But again, we have now a video format that we have to think through with that. So it can be highly engaging. It can be highly risky to bring in live callers or live people that you haven't vetted yet.
Yeah, I did a couple of years ago when Clubhouse first started.
Yes.
I merged
good days.
Clubhouse with my live new media show that I did on Wednesday. So I was taking the audio from the new media show, pumping it out into Clubhouse, and then pumping the questions and the audience from Clubhouse into my live video show. And I've done that before, and it's also very very distracting from a conversation. So just to kind of paint the picture here, like what we're doing here is that the comments that are coming in, I'm typically bringing in because they add context to the flow of the conversation that we're having.
Right.
Oftentimes what I found with the Clubhouse stuff, bringing in audio into it, is that people would come in with a different agenda, and they would just start talking about something completely different than what we were talking about. I felt myself, I was getting like pulled left, pulled right, pulled up and down, and all that stuff, and I couldn't keep a consistent flow of conversation happening on the program, and I eventually dropped out of doing it.
That's fair. I don't blame you.
Yeah. So Cameron says there, I think it's interesting you're saying that sticking to a live stream schedule is critical to building an audience, in particular in an on-demand world. I don't know that the on-demand world is any connection to it. I think it's just more what you're creating is almost like appointment consumption that you're creating with your audience, that they know every Thursday at 7 p.m., Rob's back doing the show talking about something, and I enjoyed when I was on last time, so I'll tune in this week, right? Yeah. So that's what's really going on there.
The benefit of live is that conversation. So then people need to have some kind of ability. Like on our website, I have a link to a Google Calendar or an iCal that you can just add our schedule to your schedule so that it's easy for you to show up.
Yeah, and why do people actually do that? Is it because they like the host, or do you think it's the combination of the host and the guest? So as we think about this, do we think that a lot of people are showing up here because that you're here, Callie, or not Callie? What am I thinking? Luria, I had that in my head there for a second. And
he does know my name. And just for reference, I used to go by the name Callie Lewis.
Well, and we had it up on the screen earlier, and it
totally
got into my head. But
no, it's totally fine.
But that's your real name, is what we're using now.
Yes, exactly.
So back then, the Callie was a stage name. So I think that's also another fascinating point too. And it's not necessarily in the context of why you were doing it, but women need to feel safe, right? And when they do online content, have you thought about that in the past? So, and I know some podcasters, some very popular women podcasters, have been stalked by audiences in the past. I've been around a couple of women that were at a podcast conference that were concerned about their safety, and so do you ever have any comments about that?
Sure. I mean, I've had unfortunately many stalker experiences and some very uncomfortable, very dangerous situations that I've had to face, and so it is a part of being a woman online, unfortunately.
Generally.
And I'm not saying men don't. I also know that some men have dealt with very other kinds
Dangerous.
of stalker situations and dangerous situations. So it happens. It can happen to anyone. But yes, like I think that's. So what I've learned over the years is boundaries of information.
Right.
So, I don't. If I'm concerned about a particular location, I won't post on Twitter that I'm there until after I'm gone, or don't share your city, don't share your address, obviously. There are certain boundaries of information that I stay clear of now, that I've had to learn the hard way. And also just boundaries with community themselves. So sometimes this relationship, I'm going to go deep here, so bear with me. But sometimes the community aspect and the conversation of host to community can get blurred lines, and that's something that you kind of have to work through. And sometimes the audience can feel, if you're honest and transparent and just real and raw with your audience, like I have been always, that can lead to certain types of personalities feeling like they just know you and have a connection that isn't necessarily real. And so that's something that you have to gauge and understand and kind of move through and create your own boundaries. And so, there are certain things that I will or won't do when it comes to offline conversations with community members. But that's a whole other topic, in and of itself. But that is a reality, and it's not a reality that should cause you to stop or to shy away from. It's just a matter of setting boundaries.
And just knowing in advance where those lines are for you personally, and where your comfort zone is.
Yeah.
I would think is really important too.
And sometimes we have to make mistakes in order to know where those lines are, right? And I've made plenty of mistakes over the years, and I've had to, reset and come backwards, and you just have to figure it out. And I'm always happy to support anybody who's feeling like they have a security risk or issue of just like talking through that. But
yeah, I know it's an important topic, especially for women to think about, at least
be aware of.
Right. And kind of mentally think about that as you're doing content. And that's
always have moderators. Very important.
Right. That's true too. So Bruce has a comment. Do you believe what do you believe is the best way to monetize a podcast? And this is a pretty big question, really, at the end of the day, because there's lots of options here. But what's your kind of quick recommendation on that, Luria, from your experience?
So the way I look at monetization is on platform versus off platform, right? And so on platform doesn't matter whether you're talking Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, whatever. The on-platform options are sponsorships, which are very popular with podcasters. And then you have, certain things like, depending on the platform, they might have memberships or, super chats on YouTube, for instance, that I use a lot, right? So you have on-platform options, which are really easy for the audience to engage with and to support you with, but it requires you to actually continually put content out in order to continue to make money. Off-platform monetization looks more like, if you have courses or a membership or things that you kind of control more of and are more based on a business model of building that back end business so that you can scale beyond the content itself. And so I like to say you need both. Because that's the way I for 10 years I was sponsorship only and Patreon and member supported content, which was great, and I made a lot of money that way, but it was volatile and it was risky. And when I burnt out, blew up my 2 million followers at that time and changed my name and all of that, all of that went away. right? And so because I wasn't creating the same content on the same platform then. And so I've become really passionate about helping people understand that they also need that off-platform monetization model that gives them a little bit more control over the ups and downs of this world and have a long-term future.
Yeah, I think do you think that we're kind of moving away from advertising as a significant element in monetization? I know it's still important on YouTube, but I just get a sense that in the podcasting space, it's kind of in a little bit of a free fall right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard so many people say, oh, like my CPMs are way down and all of that, right? And it goes up and down.
This does.
Is another, you guys, we got to be tenacious in this industry. We've got to stick it out for the long run. We've got to have a model of diversification so that we're not relying solely on CPMs and advertising, because it is going to go up and down. Billboard advertising, TV advertising, any form of advertising is going to fluctuate in terms of how much you can make per, right? Yep. And so that's something to just be aware of. And I would say it's not necessarily going to be the end all be all. This is not going to be the rates for all time, but something's going to have to change in the industry so that those rates then go back up. And, that's going to just ebb and flow as everything does in life. Yep. So having a diversified monetization strategy will help.
Multiple revenue streams is really the best approach. I mean, if you can have multiple income sources coming in from various projects advertising can be part of it. Sponsorship can be part of it. Brand endorsement, brand relationships, selling a product or service. And even you can augment with some revenue around programmatic advertising, especially on the podcasting side. So this is kind of a very complicated media landscape. It's not as simple as it was when we first got started in all this, was it?
Yeah, you're absolutely
There's
right.
so many options now. So Sunset Labs has a really quick question for you. I mean, of course, these really quick questions are like hour-long conversations, but what's the best way to start a new video podcast? Well, I guess the first thing you have to figure out is, well, what do you consider to be a video podcast? Right.
Format, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah,
we were talking about earlier what is the definition of a podcast these days, and so I think that boils down to format at the end of the day. And so what Rob was saying, what kind of format are you looking for? What is a podcast to you? Is it an interview show? Is it a single host delivering content? And is it story based? Is it listicle based? Is it conversation based? And so understanding kind of what format and kind of content that you want to create is probably the first step. And then understanding, the value that provides and turning that into what is the audience going to get from this are the first things that you've got to do in any form of content, including video podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I especially like Cameron's question here. What are your thoughts on very long format live streams like this one?
We can talk.
Right. Is live long duration programs, especially like this. I mean, I've got more questions in here that for us to go and talk about than really I typically have time for, because I usually only go like maybe an hour and 15 minutes max. And that's considered long form content in the world today, right? It's not short form content, but yet, where do you draw the line? Right.
Well, let's be honest. Every platform loves for you to keep your audience, their audience on their platform for as long as you can. So, there's a benefit to that long form. You have to understand that it is, as a live stream, going to be very in and out. So not everybody is going to stay the entire time. Not everybody is going to show up at the top of the hour when you start. And so you have to also think through that in a live stream format of how am I going to capture people's attention who just show up 30 minutes in and make sure that they feel involved. So there's a lot to think about from that perspective. It's not, don't put so much pressure on yourself and stop the process. But in terms of long form, an hour is long form. Again, depending on the type of value, audiences on a replay may not watch that long of a video on an on-demand basis. But then there are people who kill at 4 hours, 5 hours, right? And 6 hours. So
that's why it's such a hard conversation to have, to give somebody a clear picture on this.
What kind of content are you creating? What audience wants that content, and how do you format that content, right? And so, again, coming back to audience, it's all about, our decisions have to always be about audience. That's core at the end of the day of any kind of content. So if you're going to create live streams, that's one type of audience. Not everybody in the world watches live streams. And so then what other kind of content can you create? A ton of people watch short form content, under 1 minute. Then that's a different kind of audience. But those short form viewers may never watch a live stream. A live stream audience may never watch a short form video. But if you're like me, we're going to go TMI here. I love long form content, but I watch short form content on the toilet, right? Because I'm not going to watch a live stream on the toilet because I'm not there for that long, hopefully. If we do, I need to go see a doctor. So there's, the concept of what kind of audience are we talking about? Where are they watching? How are they consuming? And what format are you going to deliver that in? Those are the questions that you have to answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this
Sorry
comment.
For the TMI.
I think it's Equin Voices in the UK, talking about there's no right or wrong on this one on the duration side. I think is what he or she's referring to here, but it's kind of like a good pair of shoes, right? So this is a creative medium. I mean, you have to think about it like that, right? It's almost like I've been following the amount of live simultaneous viewers that this show has had, because it displays it in the StreamYard interface here. And I can see that up and down fluctuation. It's going from 30 plus to 40 plus to 30 plus. If it stays up in the upper part of that range, right, I think I'm doing good, and I just keep going, right? But if it starts to dip off and we start losing people, it's like, now's the time to pull the plug, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not the host. This guest is boring. Let's get her off ASAP, right?
Yeah, well, certainly you're never boring. So I think we all saw that first video you made a long time ago. So that's certainly not a boring video. So anyway, it's interesting. But I should probably, I still have a ton of questions here, and I thank everybody for jumping in and engaging and contributing and
awesome.
Helping us have, this deep conversation. I wish I had time to be here all night, which I have done 2-hour shows before. It's not unusual for me to do a 2-hour show, but it's just, I think we all need to move on with our evening. But
and if we don't get to your question, by the way, hit me up on Twitter. Send me a DM on Instagram. I am all about having that conversation. I'm happy to answer your questions if we're not able to, get through all of them today. Yeah,
that'd be awesome. And I'm the same way. I can just be reached at robgreenlee@gmail.com if you have a question, or just put it in the comment field and I'll see it anyway.
Yeah.
So, but I think what we should do next is do our drawing, our giveaway.
Yes. Oh, there's a giveaway.
So it's always fun to give away some swag and reward.
I'm feeling a little jealous. You guys, here. I'm not even eligible for the giveaway, so I'm feeling a little jealous of all you watching now.
That's right. I already got it all, so I'm all good. So anyway, let's do that. Let's do a quick change here to pull up the drawing. And so if you haven't put into the comment field of your chosen live stream consumption platform, please put in #TheYard. I think we're up to like 40 entries right now.
Ooh,
so
nice.
It'd be great to have your entry in there as well. So let's, I'm going to convert that over to, I think I can put it up on the screen now, add to stage. And we can just pull the drawing cord here, and hopefully we can come up with a winner. And
Drum roll.
what's really important here to think about is after your name or your ID comes up here, to send me an email with your address and any comments that you want to give me at that point too. And I will forward your address to StreamYard, and they will get you out your mug and your hoodie, which is what I'm wearing. So this is basically the hoodie that you'll get. So just tell us like your size, and we'll send it out to you. So let's go ahead and pull the ripcord here and see who wins.
I'm doing my best drum roll, and I have no no ability to do a good drum roll. I tried.
Yeah, you did. Thank you so much. Windows XP,
Windows
the
XP!
animator, is our winner tonight. So awesome, terrific. Yeah, and thank you for your great questions tonight too. I saw you pop up many times.
Yeah.
with that.
Congratulations.
I'm going to take a picture of that so I know who that is, but I don't know who you are, so you need to send me an email, rob.greenlee@gmail.com, and I will get you out your swag. So come back and join me next week on this show too. So I believe I'm going to have a show next week. So let's do that. And Luria, what's the best place for people to go to follow your stream? I know that you're doing a live show yourself.
Yeah, every Friday I'm live, 10 a.m. Pacific, youtube.com/live streaming pros. So tomorrow morning I'll be live, so come join me, hang out. I'm going to be talking tomorrow about Instagram Live Producer. So now you can go from, software to Instagram. But I answer questions. If you're interested in learning what tech and gear to buy so that you have professional looking video, that link is in the description. It's livestreamingpros.com/gear. Simple, easy shopping list for you, ready to go. You don't need to make any decisions about the gear. We've got it covered for you. So I would love to just hang out with you, get to know you all. And I really, really appreciate, Rob, you inviting me and allowing me to just geek out with you about all of this stuff. And I really appreciate each and every one of you for commenting so much and asking such great questions. I know we didn't have a chance to get to them all, and I apologize for that.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. But that's actually something I feel bad about. I don't know if I should actually stay here for 2 hours, but I'm also imposing on your life too. So anyway, well, thank everybody for joining me here, and I appreciate it. And go check out Luria's website, and I will display it up here again. And if you want to engage with her, I know that she has some terrific things up there too. I was going to show you. She also has a list of her studio equipment that I saw up there too, which I thought was really interesting.
I don't even think we could fit everything on there, but yeah.
Yeah, well,
I have a little
I'm sure
bit of
all
gear.
of the cords and cables probably aren't on that list, but this kind of gives you a little bit of idea of the kind of gear that that she uses to do the live stuff that she does, and I've got a teleprompter here too.
Oh yeah. I just got. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's like 3 or 4 different teleprompters. There's ones that are easy to use, and there's ones that are probably hard to use. I've got an 18-inch one here that I haven't fully got it set up yet, but
I just got, when Elgato released their Elgato prompter, I now have that in my studio. So now I have 3 prompters, which is way more than anybody needs. But I did I'm doing a whole
here. Right. That's this one here, right?
Oh yeah, we did add it. Nice. Yes, that's that one. It's starting to ship, and it's a really easy one to use. So if you're looking for a good prompter, we have that link right there. And I have a whole playlist on my YouTube channel about getting the most from the Elgato prompter, the pros, the cons, all of that. So if you go to livestreampros.com/setup, I think is that page that you were showing right there, and that the link is right there.
Correct. Right. And the advantage of a teleprompter is that you can actually look at the camera versus looking down or over and stuff like that, which is important to do.
Yeah, and you don't have to just have a script, right? Like I have you right here on my prompter right now so that I can look you in the eye as we're talking, and I'm not, awkwardly looking way over here and people are wondering who am I talking to?
And it's a challenge a little bit with doing a live show because you're trying to navigate comments and you're trying to throttle back and forth between views and things like that. So it can be a little bit of a challenge too.
For sure.
To actually juggle all this stuff, but I've definitely enjoyed a teleprompter in the past because it definitely keeps your focus. So but anyway, I think we've kind of went a little long here. So
no worries. And thank you everybody for having me, and you guys are awesome.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate it. And we will jump out of here now and cut off the stream, but definitely come back and check out the show next Thursday. And I've got another terrific guest that's coming in the door, and I believe it's Mr. Dave Jackson, who's also another Hall of Fame podcaster.
School, yeah.
So, right. So anyway, we'll have a terrific night, Luria, and I appreciate it all. You being here and being such a good sport and kind of doing what it takes to get this live show going. So thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody, and thank you for watching.
Happy holidays.
Oh, that didn't work.
Hello. Popping back in.
There's too many buttons to click.
I know. I get it.